Hey everybody, your natural dog with Angela Ardolino, and my guest today is Amanda Ree. She is an Ayurvedic practitioner for animals. She practiced under Deepak Chopra for years and is just such a joy to talk to and learn how Ayurvedic principles apply to her pets. The doshas, the different personalities, how it can help us understand, maybe relax and learn to meditate with our pets. Anyway, join us for this awesome conversation after this commercial.
This is Ayla. She's a 7-year-old Schnauzer Poodle mix, and she suffers from chronic allergies. Prior to finding Ayla's full spectrum hemp oil, we were giving her Apoquil every day for her allergy symptoms, and that did nothing but mask her symptoms and lower her immune system. Ever since September of 2020, when Ayla had a mast cell tumor removed surgically, we've been using her full spectrum hemp oil every night. Ayla enjoys running around in the yard. She enjoys going for walks and car rides, and her favorite thing to play with is her red ball. We are so happy we found her full spectrum hemp oil so we can ease her allergy symptoms naturally.
And we're back with Amanda Ree, and I'm so excited to talk to you because, I'm a huge fan of Deepak Chopra, who you worked with, and I love everything about Ayurveda and Ayurvedic medicine. It is probably what I'm most familiar with, like Chinese. Not really at all. And anything I do understand, it's because of what I've learned through Ayurvedic. So when I found you, I was like, oh, yes, perfect marriage of my dog's health and well-being. I'm a big fan of adaptogens, and everything I learned about adaptogens was from Ayurvedic medicine because they use them in combination and understand the synergy. I mean, just probably better than anyone. Maybe I'm speaking out of line, but I feel like that it always made sense. I just related to it. But I want you to tell people, how are you using Ayurveda with pets? Is it the same type of thing? Do they have the same chakras and doshas as we do? And how do they benefit from it? I guess I want to know, how in the heck did you marry the two? Did you learn all about it? We'll go to the other part in a minute. Did you learn all about it and then go, why isn't anybody doing this with pets?
Yeah, that's actually very much how that happened. I'm surprised that you know more about Ayurveda than traditional Chinese medicine or other modalities, because most people don't.
Because of Deepak.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Did you read his books and
I met him when I was 25 years old, and he had just released his book, and I bought a book for me and my mom and my sister, and everybody had them all sign it. I still have the book. It made it on the RV when I moved.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, he changed my life. You know, I absolutely changed my life. So it just made perfect sense to me. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no problem. I love it. And I'd love to hear how you came to it. He absolutely changed my life too. I began into the field of yoga first, just falling in love with yoga after, only sampling it in the class, what we now know as asana, the postures on the mat. That was where I began, as many do. And then deciding that I was going to go off to an ashram, which actually is near where I live now in Northern California. So that's one of the reasons I'd come to this area. The Shivananda tradition is here, one of their ashrams. So I came out to the ashram. It was a total eye-opening, a little very far out of my box experience, actually. It's really traditional school. So there was lots of chanting and, the food and the lifestyle and the long meditations and the breathing practices, the pranayama, and tons of devotion. And that was something that I hadn't experienced before. And so I fell in love with it and knew that it would change my life. So I really dove into that world of yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda. I had never heard the word Ayurveda, which a lot of people don't even know how to say it. So I like to always share your Veda. So your Veda. Yep. So I'd never heard that word. I didn't know about the science at all until then. And then, like you, my eyes were opened to it, and the most natural of the healing sciences. And it just aligns with nature. It aligns with the 5 elements. So it's quite logical and intuitive, actually. It's like a healing science that we all already know. And then we just learn names and labels to put on it. And so, I fell in love with that and eventually ended up working with Deepak, living in San Diego at that time, hearing that the Chopra Center was nearby and manifesting the dream job. And then started running the events with Deepak for about 15 years. I was there and did all of the teacher trainings and the advanced teacher trainings, and then learned from, of course, all the amazing luminaries that come through the doors and came through the courses. We did courses in everything from natural healing to emotional healing to spiritual connection and silent retreats and all kinds of things in between.
And the Chopra Center's not around anymore, right? Because I always wanted to go and didn't. And I remember looking it up going, okay, well, next time I get over to California, I'm going to go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not there anymore.
Yep.
What a special time.
Yes, it was. I did
go to the one when they opened one in New York City in a hotel. I went to that one.
Oh, cool.
I got to do that.
The Dream Hotel it was called.
Yeah. I got to do that and it was really,
short-lived.
But at least I got to experience that one.
Great. Yeah. And Deepak's still touring, of course. He's doing lectures and, part of different summits and things like that. And, but the actual Chopra Center is no longer. The events pretty much are no longer as well. And so, it was the best time to be there. And, we grew so much as a organization and I as an individual and us as a team. So I hosted and facilitated and emceed and taught and guided the events for all those years. And it was incredible. It was eye-opening. And so you learn to see the world, I always call it, through Ayurvedic goggles. So as I was looking at the world through these goggles, looking at everything from everyone to the music you listen to, the food you eat, the different environments, even the color you're going to choose for your iPad case, all of a sudden I'm like, got my Ayurvedic perspective on all the time. And I started fostering dogs at that time. So you might know my story, but I'm not sure if our listeners do, that my life was saved by a dog when I was 3 years old. I fell in the pool in the backyard in LA when we were living there, and our Sheltie, who's not, known for swimming or rescuing necessarily, he jumped in and saved me. And so dogs and I have always had like a really deep soul bond. So, I'd always been very close with them. I grew up working at my parents' pet store in Lake Tahoe.
Aww.
So I always they were my best friends,
So you're literally like merging your two loves and passions.
Exactly. That's what happened.
Beautiful.
So I started fostering dogs in San Diego. And as I would be taking care of them, especially in the beginning, as I got into it, I was able to get dogs that had more and more medical need and more behavioral need. And especially when I got into that work, I thought, okay, well, I can use the recommendations and I'll stay the path. But I wonder if some of the other techniques and kind of philosophy of healing that I know would apply. So I started applying it, and lo and behold, it was absolutely profound the way that it took root and that the animals accepted it and how quickly the transformation was there, because again, it's nature science, nature and of all animals. So then I, like many of us, probably like you too, just Googled Ayurveda for animals, Ayurveda for dogs, and I found nothing. So I said, well, someone's got to do this and put this out into the world. And so was born Sama Dog. And that was like 7 years ago now.
Oh, I love it. So what were some of the first principles you started to applying that you really saw dogs reacting to? Like meditation? I mean, can dogs do yoga?
They certainly can. People
and
have.
And how do you figure out their doshas?
Yeah. I think the first one that I really saw the most profound change with was my own dog, Maya. At the time, she passed away about 3 years ago. But Maya was a very a dog that came from a very difficult background, a lot of neglect. I remember when we first met her, she was shaved down to like literally the skin, not even like a short haircut, because she was that matted. She was one of those dogs where they shave off the whole coat and it's just like this big thick. So she it was in the middle of summer when we met her, and she had a Christmas sweater on. It was the cutest thing. And so that stood out in my mind always. So Maya had always, I guess she grew up in a house where there was like all these other dogs, and the person would just throw down some food and they would all fight over the food, and just had a lot of triggers and phobias and fears and tons of anxiety. Was constantly chewing on her nails and her feet, had a lot of digestive issues. So I had, of course, taken her to the vet many times and been working with the more conventional therapies. And when I would be over, this was kind of a moment that was eye-opening for me. When I would be around Maya, I would get agitated and irritated because of her agitation and irritation. And what I noticed was also we reflect what is around us. And that is a key principle of Ayurveda, is bringing in the opposite principle, the opposite energies. So if someone like Maya is very light and nervous and dry and anxious and airy, that's Vata in the doshas, the mind-body types, you bring in the earthy principles, you bring in the groundedness, you bring in the moisture and the solidity, and there you meet in the middle for harmony, which, by the way, is what Sama is. Equanimity and balance is what Sama means. Like this ultimate balance. And so I was noticing how triggered I was by Maya. And then I was just like, okay, if I can calm myself down around her, maybe she'll calm down too. And that's when I started meditating and noticing the way that she was really drawn to that. Even just 3 deep breaths, I would notice that she would come closer, and then she would take a big deep sigh. And I thought that was so interesting.
I want everyone to try that.
Powerful.
It's so true. Like, just you go lay down in the yard and just start taking deep breaths, and your dogs, your cat, whatever, your chickens are going to come over to you and be with you. I love that. It's so true.
They will. They're just sigh right back, just like a yawn. Just like we say, it's contagious, right? The sighing, the breathing, the deep breathing, then everything that's attached to the deep breathing, like the calming of the nervous system, the regulating of the whole kind of, the stress hormone levels, that all comes into us and into our animals as well. And I think any of us that have meditated know that it can happen pretty quickly. And that's us humans, that oftentimes our mind is the biggest barrier. I can't meditate. My mind won't be quiet. I'm not cut out for this, having all these perceptions, where animals don't think that way. They just know it feels good. And so they're like, okay, I'm in. And right away.
How do you meditate with your animal, or meditate with your dog? As you go into it with them?
Yep, absolutely. On my site, there's a application, a meditation app called Round Glass, and on slamadog.com, I have the link to a whole page of meditations with your pets, and they're like super highly produced. We had like all kinds of people on the back end. And
I know some of my listeners are going to love that. Oh, they're going to love that.
Lovely. Yeah, they have music set to them, and I do a little short lesson, and then we meditate together. So that can be really enjoyable. But yeah, you just meditate yourself, and they are very drawn to it. They, in fact, love it, because not only are they feeling the benefit, but we all know how connected our animals are to us, and how perceptive they are of how we're feeling and doing. So when we're in a calm space, we're grounded, we're healing, they desire that for us, and it's very comforting to them to know that that's what's going on with you. So so right away I did that.
What did you see with Maya? How did you see her behavior change?
I think the first thing I noticed was she actually sat still while we would meditate, and she was never still. She would also be less reactive. Like, she was the type of dog where if she heard a car door close, or someone's keys jingle, or a dog collar walking down the street in front of us, she's up immediately and barking at the door or whatnot, and she would let distraction go by. And so then, after I realized the impact of just simply sitting with her and being relaxed with her, I thought, okay, let's try some of the other things. I'm just going to take my earring out because I think it's hitting against my microphone, and that could be a little bit annoying for me. There we go. So I then began to move it into other parts. So you could say, like, meditation is working with the mind, certainly the spirit as well, but with the mind. So I thought, okay, it's a mind body healing science. So let's try on the other side of things, the body side. So then I started adding what you do with Vata dosha. That's the mind body type that's air and space. So you want to, as I mentioned, ground them, bring them down to earth, create more comfort and stability. So I started just simply adding warm, moist, oily foods.
So you knew that she was that dosha, and how did you know? How did you figure out that she was that dosha? Because of her personality?
Yeah, because of the symptoms that I was seeing and the just the behaviors. Again, with the Ayurvedic goggles, you start to see everything through those three doshas. But if someone doesn't have a lot of experience or know the doshas at all, I have a dosha quiz on samadog.com right there on the homepage. And you could go through, it's like 15 questions, and then it tells you if what your animal is predominantly. We are all three of the doshas because we all are made up of all the elements. However, at certain times, we have a natural disposition that is a doshic combination, and then the life happens and things influence us, and we can get an imbalance. So Maya was predominantly Vata, again, air principle.
And I feel like I could right now say, okay, audience, raise your hand if she sounds like she's talking about your dog or one of your dogs, because I've got a Maza who sounds just like your dog.
Yep. And then they have, different times in life that they're influenced. And so she's Vata with a Vata imbalance, as you call it in Ayurveda. And so when I saw that she already had a nervous disposition, she already was very skinny, raily, that may be some of our audience noticing that in their dogs as well. Fidgety, as I mentioned, always moving, like even in the night, she'd sleep in like 6 different spots, versus just like the earthier dogs that just conk out and they stay in that same position all night. Right. People might also start to see this in their family members. It's one of the fun aspects of learning Ayurveda. Even in the lens of animals, you start to be able to apply it to the humans and everyone else in your life. So anyway, she had this natural disposition towards that nervous, skinny, squirrely, ungrounded, anxious, riddled energy. But then because of her background, she was still pretty new to us in our life together. And so I think that imbalance was there still so strongly. So I just knew like that's the place to start. And it's worth saying that if you do notice that in your animal, Vata is, they call it the king of the doshas. So it's the one that throws all the other doshas out or throws the other doshas in. So it is a good starting place for all of us, human or any, other than human animals. We tend to get imbalanced and nervous and ungrounded in this pretty hectic world. So I think most of us do tend towards Vata imbalance, even if that's not our natural disposition. It's pretty easy to have that come up.
Got it. So what'd you do with her?
So I
grounded her.
You're grounded.
No, for your own good.
She, even like one example of, you got the mental side and the physical side, right? Another example, in addition to meditation for the mental side, is a grounding position or space. So something I'll very commonly recommend for people dealing with a Vata imbalanced dog is a crate, and we all know, I think on many lists, so there's lots of misunderstandings about crates.
Oh no, Maza cannot be without her crate.
Yeah.
Her safe place.
Yeah. And there's plenty of people though, right, that I'll be working with my clients and they'll say, oh no, I'm not going to put my dog in a cage. It's like the word cage is a negative. So I call it their house. They all know, get in your house. And
go to your room.
Door can stay open forever. You can take the door off for all I care, but especially for a Vata animal, they love to have a space to call home. They love to have a place that they know is their own, and that they are protected and safe. I mean, remember, dogs are cave-dwelling animals, and so den animals, and so not so much caves, but dens. So if we have a crate or any sort of area that they have enclosure, even putting a little sheet over the top Again, leave the whole front open. That can be one of the best things for a Vata animal because they'll go in there when they do feel a little insecure or unsure or just want to take a peaceful nap and know that nothing's going to come at them. You know, they're always a little bit on edge. So that can help a lot. And so I did that with Maya. Right away, got her own little crate and made it nice and warm and fuzzy and cozy and comforting for her. Used some aromas, like grounding aromas at that play at that in that space as well. I work a lot with flower essences, so I use some of those.
Awesome.
Also for grounding, relaxation. You can use, again, for the mind, music. That's another big influence, even though dogs might not notice exactly what type of music that is. Anything that makes us feel like, it's good. At least most of us. Some people relax to heavy metal or something, but most of us.
I think that's just like releasing frustration or something. But yes, I find that too with the dogs. They like whatever that relaxing music or frequencies that relax us.
Yeah. What you'd hear if you were getting a spa treatment, you were meditating, YouTube meditation music, all that music is going to be very relaxing for animals too. So I would play that music for her. And then the flip side, not so much the flip side, but the complementary side is the physical. And the physical, the easiest way, Ayurveda teaches us that the ways to access the physical are the food and touch. Kind of just a cool thing about Ayurveda, like from the neck up are the senses that balance the mind. So the sense of taste, smell, and sight and hearing. Taste it helps both the mind and the body. So then the neck down, taste also a little bit, of course, and then touch, taste because of the whole digestive system being in the torso, and then the sense of touch. So you can work with those different senses depending on what you're aiming to balance in your animal. So on that physical side, I did a lot of massage and just like petting and cuddling, not like in a way that was creating insecurity, because sometimes a lot of physical touch can create an animal to be insecure when they're not being touched. So I wanted her to be independent enough, but also like get in her body. So I worked with just very basic. You don't even need to really know any techniques. They're not going to judge like you would if you were going off to Miraval or some, love with ball. Like, wait, it's not quite balanced on the right and the left. Dogs don't care. You can just give them a little massage in their paws, behind their ears, down the neck, long strokes down the body. So I would do a lot of that sort of work to kind of just get her in her physical form. And then food, in the food, the technique of balancing Vata, balancing that airiness, is warm, moist, and oily, as I mentioned earlier. So literally just warm, purified, clean water on her food, oils, and then grounding foods that would help to create more hydration and stability. So there's a lot more, of course, to get into details of foods, but even warming foods, traditional Chinese medicine talks about cooling foods, neutral, and warming. So choosing warming foods can be very helpful as well.
Very cool. I love it. And that's about what I know about Chinese medicine is the warming and the cooling of the herbs and food. And that's about it that I know on that knowledge.
But that's great. That's
right. No,
that's
it's
huge.
it is. It's so, and it's funny because I remember learning it and changing my life and making so much sense of why a dog was behaving a certain way after they got fed a chicken or beef or lamb or something like that. So yeah, I've seen it over and over again. So what kind of things changed in her behavior? Like, did she become a different dog? Did she become calmer?
Absolutely. One of the most immediate things I noticed is that much less reactivity and fidgetiness. She was always plucking the hairs off of her belly. So literally when we first got her, as I said, she was hairless, but even when she grew some hair, she was always plucking all the hairs off of her stomach. Little by little, it just like it was a nervous thing, almost like people who will pull on their hairs, or chew their fingernails or whatever.
Right.
So her hair on her belly started growing back. She started being much less barky. Vata people love to talk, out of balance, too much talking. A Vata imbalanced person is the kind of person that you're on the phone with and you can like put the phone down and go grab something to drink and come back and they didn't even notice that you were gone. That's a Vata imbalance. And so dogs in Vata imbalance will be very yippy, and whiny. That was another thing, actually, now that I talk about it again, it's, she was always like, there was this subtle whine all the time, especially when she was chewing on her feet. Just this little whine. So that went away. And that was really within like 3 days of starting to apply the techniques. And then I'd say within 2 to 3 weeks, I definitely noticed weight gain for the first time. And I had done all the other things as far as, higher caloric food and healthy fats and, all the kind of typical guidance that we'll get. But it was because we were balancing her overall that her body was finally able to hold on to the calories that she was absorbing. And in general, now Maya always was very strange around food her whole life, up until the end, because of that initial conditioning. However, she was one of those dogs that was very hard to get to eat. And that's a common symptom of Vata imbalance. Something that I deal with a lot with my clients is my dog just won't eat consistently. And then they've got the 20 different dog foods on the shelf in their house and they're trying to rotate them. And it's never really going to
do
work.
With it. Right.
It's nothing to do with it. That's never going to work. They might get interested for a day or two, but there's a deeper imbalance. So once we create that balance on the inside, now they are hungry, their appetite is consistent, and they do want to eat. And then you can find a formulation or kind of a recipe that works for them. And she started eating really regularly and without like all the conditions of needing to like put her in a room all by herself over in a corner with a certain dish at a certain time and certain music. It was like we'd have this whole routine to get her to consume some food. And that became much less within the next few weeks. And then, like I said, she started to gain some weight. And something that really stood out with Maya too was she and I grew a deeper relationship. Because at that time, I'm Vata and Pitta, pretty balanced. Pitta being the fiery dosha, fire and water. So what I noticed in Maya was we would trigger each other. That airiness, that ungroundedness would create excess for both of us. And that whining, I would like, it was like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. I just couldn't take it sometimes. And I wouldn't want to, yell at her or something because that would just scare her. So I would just go in the other room. So we would physically create distance from each other all the time. So once she was more grounded and in her body and more stabilized, I was able to be around her more. And I was also inspired to take those same steps for myself, knowing that I wasn't helping and I knew the tools to do. I just wasn't doing them. And to see them reflected in my animal, I think for many of us inspires us to take care of ourselves even better because we see not what we're doing. I know it's not on purpose, but what we may be reflecting to the animals that we love so much. So I said, all right, this is a worthwhile cause for both of us. And so as she grounded, I grounded, and our relationship was much closer after that. And that was a really beautiful part of it. And I'd say probably, when it touches the heart so deeply like that, that's what really inspired me. Like, this is not just my story. So many animals have the same situation.
You are talking about my Maza, which I think is so nuts. And it's funny because she was a rescue she was rescued from Bosnia. They rescued her from Bosnia, brought her back. They lived on 10 acres, took her some time for adjustment, but then happiest dog in the world. Then they moved to a tiny little house in a tiny little yard and then had a baby and decided she was too crazy. So then I get her. And like everything is pretty good. Realized the crate, the food aggression, everything that you described is so her. Everything's been going good, but now I've moved. And now we live in an RV and are traveling. So it's kind of like repeating the whole thing and watching her go find her safe place, which is usually on the side of the bed.
Yeah.
If we go rent a house, same thing. She finds the room we're going to sleep in. And then the side of the bed by the wall is where she's always going to be found, kind of thing. But it's so true. And it's kind of like I have to repeat everything now because we've disrupted what's normal in her routine. And guess what? We were able to do it out in the woods, just sitting out in the woods. She was so calm.
There you go.
Reactive bark, just because you heard something. I mean, people and dogs could walk by us and there was no reaction. So it's like, I want people to try it out because everything that you're saying is so true. And I've applied, and sometimes we have to reapply. So thank you for sharing that story because it's so true. How in the heck did you do you share this knowledge with veterinarians? I mean, I know it can't be easy because, of course, they're not taught anything about this. They're not even, told that this even exists. So, like, when you come along and go, yeah, meditate with your dog, what I'm sure you get the holistics who are like, ooh, great. Yes, I want to learn more, but you must get some resistance.
Oh, yes, there's some resistance. Luckily, now more than ever, it's accepted. Maybe not Ayurveda specifically because they don't know what you're talking about, but
Right.
like a mind body connection, heating and cooling foods. Most vets will, even conventional vets will know that there's something to that. Most conventional vets also have worked enough with their animals in their life, and animals with their clients, that they see the condition or the circumstances or the imbalances that are in the person are commonly in the dog. You don't need to really have a lot of Eastern knowledge to see that relationship before your eyes. And I think a lot of vets don't know what to do about that. They don't know how to treat an animal. You can only give so many recommendations and, the various protocols to an animal, knowing that if the human is going to have this strong energy around them, there's only so much healing that can come here. So I think I usually do try to kind of take that approach where it's like, it's Sama Dog Wellbeing for dogs and their humans. So I try to bring in like the mutual healing aspect and benefit for all, including everyone in the family. Because you've known people who, and I've certainly been those people who had an extremely nervous, just to stay on that same kind of theme, an extremely nervous dog. It's very hard for anyone in that family to be calm, grounded, efficient, non-irritated by all of that. So, when you kind of bring to them that it's this mind, body, environment, personality, behavioral, inclusive philosophy, they're pretty open to it. And I just leave all the labels and the Sanskrit. A lot of Ayurveda, of course, being from India, is based in Sanskrit, like yoga and namaste and shavasana and all these words that we know. So I just stay away from the Sanskrit so it doesn't turn people off, and instead just speak to what is already known. And like I said before, Ayurveda is like the most logical science. I know at Chopra Center, when I used to teach kind of the Ayurveda 101 kind of class, at the end, people would kind of be looking at you like, I don't know if I learned anything. And it's because we already know it. We already know all of this. It's just giving it some categorization and some logic.
And
we're also
right, but we're also working against a world who doesn't want us to remember that. They don't want us to remember nature's medicine and the way things should be. So it's constantly, we forget about it because the messages are different from that. And we don't know nature can provide us everything that we need.
Absolutely. And we're also very used to looking outside. Like, let me talk to my vet about this situation. And it's like, wait, maybe first
trusting yourself.
Talk to yourself.
Yes.
Why do you think your dog's acting like that? Why do you think you're acting like that? What's going on in your family? And it's one of my favorite parts of doing a consultation with a client is, getting their form, looking at what's going on. I'll ask it a little bit on the form, and it doesn't happen every time because it's always about the unique circumstance. That's what Ayurveda is all about, is individuation. But in that individual opportunity to speak with them, if I sense that the person's open to it, I'll ask, what's going on in your life? What's going on in your family? And the tears come and the breakthroughs come and the stories come, and it's profound to hear what's happening and how they don't know what to do about it, and how they definitely don't know what to do about this dog that's being affected by all of it. And it's like, okay, let me bring in some very simple tools that you all can enjoy and you all can benefit from. Like we said, breathing, just simple breathing, taking 2 minutes to breathe together. I mean, it sounds so simple and almost like trite, but it's not.
It changes everything.
It does.
And there's so much value in having someone like yourself be the person on the outside looking in. I just had this experience too, where I used to do lots of consultations, but it was the same thing. It was like, what was the trigger? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
Was it something in the family? Was it a vaccine? What was the trigger that started this whole thing? And I feel like a lot of people don't understand that the emotional side of things. I just, met a horse who just got sick all of a sudden, and nobody I'm trying to figure out what made this horse sick. And for some reason, I knew that it wasn't something that he ate or did. I knew it was emotional, but I didn't know why. And they finally told me, oh, yeah, last month his best friend died. Like, well, okay, so that's why he's sick. That's what started this down, thing.
Yes.
I immediately felt like, all the answers came to me. And that's, the emotional didn't get taken care of. And now he's alone and lost his best friend suddenly. And they were like bonded. And it was crazy to be the outside person to go, well, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then go, oh, shit. Wow. They were mourning. They didn't even think about how he was mourning.
Yeah.
So I think that is really important. We've gone over time. I feel like I could talk and ask questions. We didn't even get to like, what's your favorite Ayurvedic, Ayurvedic herbs and foods and chakras. So I might just have to have you come on again so that we could talk about all those fun things. But where can people find more information about you?
Yeah, they definitely can find that on samadog.com. I think a good place to start is by doing the dosha quiz. I always guide people to not take it too seriously. It's not, you don't need to figure every detail out. The quiz will give you enough information to get you to some sort of conclusion that will be helpful. And then after you take the quiz, you'll receive a series of emails that gives you information on all three doshas, because that's another thing we didn't really talk much about was the other two, which is totally fine. But just to mention them, they are Pitta and Kapha. Pitta, fiery, Kapha, earthy. So which is your animal? What are they dealing with at this time? And then you'll get all kinds of different mind or body or combination techniques that you can bring in and try out. Really simple. I keep it all really, really simple. Of course, Ayurveda is can be a rather complicated science, but that's way down the line. In the very beginning.
But it does, like you said, it makes sense. It's not like something you're going, what? That just doesn't make any sense, or it's too complicated. To me, it's just like you said, it's what you say, nature's science. I love that.
Nature's science.
That is what it is.
So so that's where, and then I have tons of articles on my website as well that speak to different seasons. Like there's a really good fall article on there. It's one of my favorites. It just gives some very specific ways to introduce some various foods, supplements, liquids, into the animal's life and into their body, internally and externally. They can really help during this dry and light season. So, things like that, just kind of exploring those resources, I think is a great way to start.
Awesome. And I have to ask, does Deepak have pets?
He does not, actually. I know he travels.
Why he needed you.
He travels constantly, but so that was always tricky for him. But he was, I have to say, the whole center, Deepak included, was very, very open to me sharing these principles with our audience. That's where it all began. It was just like a little elective course one day, Ayurveda for Dogs 101, and I was like, all right, let's try it. Let's see if anybody shows up. And boy, did they show up! And that's what started the whole journey.
Thank you for what you do and for sharing your knowledge with us. It was really enjoyable talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to all of your audience. It's been really fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda.